He was lost, not just in the streets of London, but deep inside himself. Cold nights, shaky hands, no destination, no dreams. His name was James. And one day, his life crossed paths with someone unexpected, a ginger cat with bright eyes and a torn ear. His name was Bob. James lived in a shelter, trying to recover from heroin addiction. He'd play guitar on the street for spare change. Most people walked by. A few dropped coins. Most didn't even see him. One cold evening, he came home to find a stray cat sitting inside the building, like it belonged there. The cat had a wound on its leg, and despite everything he lacked, James took him in. He named him Bob. He spent his last money on antibiotics. He didn't even have enough for his own dinner. But he had already decided. Bob was family now. For the next few days, James expected Bob to leave once he healed, but he didn't. Bob stayed. He curled up beside James at night. He waited for him to return home. He looked at him as if saying, "I'm not going anywhere." Once Bob healed, he began to follow James everywhere, to the street corners, to the markets, to the tube station. James would play music, and Bob would sit beside him, calm and proud. People began to notice. The same crowd that used to ignore James now stopped to take photos, give money, ask questions. Some even came back, just to see the cat. They brought snacks, they brought scarves. Bob wore them like a gentleman. He sat perfectly still, like a statue, with his tail curled around his paws. Together, they became a London legend. But more importantly, James felt seen again, for the first time in years. And with that came change. James started waking up early. He cleaned himself better. He practiced new songs. He even started to plan, something he hadn't done in years. Bob wasn't a regular cat. Once, James tried to leave Bob at home to go to a job appointment. Bob chased the bus and caught it. The driver had to stop when he saw a cat running alongside the doors. Another time, Bob climbed on stage during a small gig and sat right in front of the mic. He didn't move. People thought it was part of the act. He had attitude, pride, and perfect timing. Bob was the star. James? Just his sidekick. Bob gave James purpose. Every day, James stayed clean for Bob. He said, "I couldn't bring drugs into a house with this innocent life watching me." He began to attend rehab more seriously. He kept track of his progress. Bob was his anchor. Eventually, a journalist noticed their story. It became a book, then a movie. James went from a shadow in the street to a published author, a speaker, and an example of redemption. But he never forgot. It all began with a cat who chose him. People often ask James, "Do you think you saved Bob?" He always smiles, shakes his head, and says, "No, Bob saved me." When I first read about Bob and James, I cried. Not just because it's a beautiful story, but because it reminded me of how powerful small acts can be. One cat, sitting by a broken man, no judgment, no demands, just presence. Sometimes we don't need to be saved by heroes or miracles. We need to be noticed, to be chosen. Bob didn't just sit beside James, he sat beside his pain and stayed there until it hurt a little less. If you're going through something dark, remember, healing doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it walks on 4 paws and wears a scarf. And maybe, just maybe, the one who saves you is the one you never saw coming.